A distraught man dialed 911 in urgency, claiming he had just woken up to find his wife, Donna Jones, cold and not breathing. Donna was the kind of woman who always wore a smile, had many friends, and was known for her outgoing nature. She was a family-oriented individual, full of love and compassion, desiring only genuine love in return. But her life took a turn when she met Mark Hutt. This once vibrant woman endured 4 relentless years of torment, which isolated her, followed by 12 days of unimaginable torture that ended her life. This tale might be difficult to process. It surprisingly didn't receive much attention, especially outside of Ottawa. This story might be new to some, but it's important to share. Not only is it a sad tale, but it also serves as a cautionary example. It recounts the unsettling events that happened to Donna Jones over a span of 12 days. The backdrop to this tragedy is Ottawa, Canada's capital and the 4th largest city, nestled in southern Ontario. Donna Ellen Jones was born there on Christmas Day, 1975. She had a sister, Jennifer, and a brother, Derek Jones. Their father was traditional, with a belief that a wife should respect her husband and was known for his hot temper. On the flip side, their mother was cheerful and generous, quite similar of Donna herself. Growing up, Donna had her insecurities, especially regarding her weight and appearance, which made her shy. Yet she was often described by friends as a cup full of sunlight and always seemed to have a smile. Intellectually inclined, Donna graduated from college, eventually securing a role in the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Financially diligent, she lived with her parents until 2005, paying off her student debts, and by 29, bought her own house. Donna was lively with friends, setting up dinners, sports, and even planning winter skating on frozen canals. But when it came to love, she was hesitant. She once told her therapist about being scared to be alone and wanting a caring partner. This feeling lasted until 2005 when someone introduced her to Mark Hutt. He was a roofer around Donna's age. Despite his tough upbringing, he completely changed Donna's life, as she once mentioned. Their romance happened quickly, and Mark moved into the new house that Donna had worked hard to save for. However, soon after, troubling signs emerged. Mark began calling Donna every 15 minutes when she was out with friends. They could hear him yelling at her, using hurtful words and showing intense jealousy. When friends called Donna at home, they could hear a noticeable click, suggesting Mark was listening in on another line. However, Donna always had an excuse for his behavior. Over time, Donna's social interactions dwindled. She began leaving gatherings earlier and was less available for friends and family meetups. Disturbingly, physical signs of abuse started showing up: bruises, cuts, and handprints. However, Donna always brushed it off with excuses like stumbling or being bitten by one of Mark's dogs. A few months into their engagement, her decline continued. She seemed less attentive to her personal grooming, letting her hair and attire go. On the eve of their 2007 wedding, instead of a celebratory bachelorette party, her friends hosted an intervention. Each shared emotional pleas, urging Donna to reconsider and offering her an escape route to a shelter. Yet, despite the heartfelt efforts and some friends even boycotting the wedding, Donna went through with it. Derek, Donna's brother, recalled their once daily conversations, which had become infrequent. During a casual visit, he noticed Mark's expensive acquisitions: a new truck, a quad bike, a pool table, and a snowmobile, while the house seemed neglected with damaged walls and broken furniture. Post-wedding, Donna's demeanor had shifted. She appeared aloof, paranoid, and submissive, almost resembling a person under the influence, devoid of her once radiant smile. Her blank stares were coupled with escalating physical harm. She had a fractured wrist that required surgical intervention, which she explained away as a fall on rocks. By the hot summer of 2009, she resorted to wearing long-sleeved turtlenecks and heavy makeup to cover cigarette burns and a growing list of injuries. From a healthy weight of 73 kilograms, she dwindled down to a frail 45 kilograms. She had a split lip that stubbornly refused to heal, a persistent limp, and burns on her hands, which, unsurprisingly, were attributed to a kitchen mishap. Mark had, on multiple occasions, warned Donna that he would end his life if she ever left him. He became wholly reliant on her, especially after declaring bankruptcy shortly after moving in. Consequently, Donna began settling his debts, and in the process accumulated her own, splurging on luxurious gifts for him, paying for his commutes, medical expenses, and so much more. She was emotionally and financially drained. Mark had consumed her. His abuse wasn't limited to just physical torment. The mental and psychological toll was evident, especially in Donna's deteriorating work performance. Constant calls from Mark interrupted her workdays, raising alarms with her supervisor. When she called in sick at the end of November 2009, her boss suspected that something was amiss. He contacted the police with his apprehensions, but to no avail. Undeterred, he planned another intervention when Donna would next show up at work, ensuring Mark's absence. However, that anticipated moment never materialized. On December 6, 2009, at 9:15 a.m., an emergency call reported a deceased woman. The 911 operator rapidly advised the distressed caller, presumably Mark, to place the woman on a firm surface and attempt CPR while awaiting the medical team. When the police officer arrived minutes later, an oddity caught his eye: an open window amidst a frigid Canadian winter. The reason became clear once inside. It was a feeble effort to dissipate a peculiar and overpowering smell, one the officer found both unnerving and unfamiliar. In the basement, he discovered Donna's lifeless body, clad in dirty pajama pants and a t-shirt, resting on an impromptu bed made of soiled sofa cushions. The medic who arrived was shocked by what they saw. Almost half of Donna's body was engulfed in severe, festering burns, with her t-shirt adhering to the purulent injuries. Her condition was likened to someone who had been dragged over a gravel road. The pronounced bruises, cuts, and the unnatural swelling on her face rendered it impossible for the paramedic to even pry open her eyes. A seemingly agitated Mark provided a disconcerting account. He mentioned Donna had suffered burns from an accidental fire incident 12 days prior, but had adamantly refused professional medical attention. Instead, he had been administering makeshift treatments at home, offering her inhalations from his asthma inhaler when she struggled to breathe and pills to counter any allergic reactions. He claimed that merely 3 hours before the devastating discovery, Donna was lively, discussing Christmas presents. However, the pathologist's findings debunked this narrative. The post-mortem examination indicated Donna had been deceased for approximately 12 hours before Mark's distress call to 911. Donna's demise stemmed from septic shock, a consequence of an infection that arose due to her failure to shield her burns. These burns, distinct from those resulting from fire, originated from boiling water. The focus of the investigation turned to Mark Hatta, whose story was inconsistent.
My wife has never spoken to me the way she spoke to me 2 weeks ago. She basically told me that she was going to go with somebody else, that I wasn't going to be a father, that because I do, you know what I mean? I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect person. I get stressed out just like everybody else. And it all started one day. I was making spaghetti in the kitchen, and I wanted to make enough for 2 weeks because my wife loves spaghetti. She loved my spaghetti. She loved it to death. So I was making a pot. I was boiling water for the noodles, and she came up behind me, and she said something about just like, this isn't working. This isn't happening. I'm gonna cheat on you, basically. Like I'm you know what I mean? If things don't work out, I'm going, you know. And she kept just saying it and putting it in my head and putting it in my head and putting it in my head. Bills in our house have been stacked up higher than you can imagine. I've been going through things with my father, everything like that. And when she said that to me, the water was boiling, and she was behind me, and I thought she had left the room. Instead of leaving the room, she was behind me. She was crouched down, and she was getting Tupperware out of the thing to bring for work. And I don't know why, I don't know what I did, but the next thing I knew, I hit that thing. Man, I wanted to just, you know what I mean? I was so frustrated, I just wanted to you know, get my frustrations out. Okay. And when I hit that pot, she was behind me, and it just drenched her. And after that, I looked at her and I said, "Sweetheart, we need to go to a hospital." She said, "I don't want to go. I don't want to go to a hospital." She was afraid for me to get in trouble, and I said, I don't care. Just go to a hospital. Please, we can deal with this together. It's an accident. We can get through it. She didn't want to go. I begged. I pleaded with her. She made up a story to her parents saying she was going to Cornwall for work. And she actually did have a cold. She called her work and said she had a cold, that she was staying home, and she wanted to heal at home. And I told her, I said, we can't do this. We have to get to a hospital. That went on for about a week of me changing bandages, staying up all night making sure she's okay.
He acted like he was heartbroken, but the autopsy results tell a darker story. Although Donna had bandages on her fingers and left forearm, most of her burns hadn't healed, especially the ones on her back. Those were the worst. Apart from the terrible burns covering 40% of her skin, there were marks of physical abuse all over her body. She had 7 broken ribs, and there were untreated fractures likely caused by kicks. Her nose had taken a blow, exhibiting the signs of being broken. 2 bruises resided beneath her eyes, accompanied by a multitude of cuts, bruises, scabs, and scratches adorning her scalp, knees, and legs. This slew of injuries preceded the scalding she endured from the boiling water. A mere 12 days earlier, her ordeal commenced with a fractured skull, a broken finger on her left hand, a fractured right wrist, and a previous forearm fracture termed a nightstick fracture, indicative of defensive action against a blunt force. However, there was another aspect to consider. Inside her body were lead bullets, fired from an air pistol and a powerful air rifle, both found in the house. Each pellet had entered her body by about 1 centimeter, showing that they were shot from a very close distance. The outcome was the development of lead poisoning, making Donna's suffering even worse. What's significant is that the pellets were deliberately placed, entering her feet, shins, shoulders, and arms. In the midst of her fight for survival, the place she lived in resembled a chamber of horrors. Clear indications of mistreatment and violence decorated its surfaces. There were bloodstains on walls, hallway floors, and even stair pillars. Among the disturbing findings were handcuffs and an array of weapons, including shotguns, a bow and arrow, a sword, and a collection of knives, 2 of which had traces of blood. Holes in the walls suggested tumultuous events. Scattered notes provided insight into Mark Hutt's unstable thoughts and fractured sense of self. One note depicted Dawn as a terrible wife, while another portrayed her as his guardian angel. Packed neatly in boxes were Mark's clothes and expensive possessions, remnants of a lost identity. Phone records revealed that while Dawn was suffering in the basement, Mark contacted his ex-girlfriend, suggesting a desire to move on from his current life. Despite her own suffering, bruised and burned over almost half her body, Dawn made phone calls after the horrifying incident. Astonishingly, she protected Mark and never sought help for herself. Even when talking to her mother, she minimized her situation and painted Mark as her caretaker. Days later, Mark Hatta was questioned again, confronted with autopsy findings, now considered a suspect in a murder investigation. They were shattered by the sight of her husband. The police officer conducting the interrogation told Mark that in his 30 years on the force, he had never witnessed such a battered body. In response, Mark tried to portray his wife as clumsy and accident-prone. He recounted incidents when Donna stumbled over dogs or a vacuum cleaner, when she fell and broke her wrist, when he accidentally hit her with his elbow, and even cases when he accidentally shot at her with pellets during target practice. When they learned to shoot using air guns, there might have been other similar incidents, though he couldn't recall. The officer mentioned that there were 29 bullets found in the shed, and while he said some incidents could be attributed to negligence, he emphasized that the cases involving Mark's wife were different. Mark replied that his father used to beat him as a child. His mother was an alcoholic. He considered this normal upbringing. The trial began on May 8, 2013, and lasted for 4 weeks. Mark Hutt pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of criminal negligence causing death. However, the prosecution rejected this plea and argued that he was guilty of first-degree murder. Mark's defense lawyer, Long Goldstein, did not deny that he had broken Donna's bones, deliberately scalded her with boiling water, or shot dozens of pellets into her skin from close range. Instead, Goldstein argued that the prosecution hadn't adequately proven that Mark intended for her to die. Goldstein admitted that Mark had subjected Donna to unbearable torture, but accused the prosecution of trying to make the jury hate Mark, rather than focusing on the evidence. He stated that Mark was guilty of criminal negligence, but not murder. He acknowledged that Mark should be punished, but for the appropriate offense. Donna was Mark's primary protector, and if he had wanted her dead, he had multiple ways to achieve that goal and eliminate evidence. No witnesses testified in his defense. Prosecutor Vicky Bear argued that Mark could not have missed seeing Donna crouching in their tiny kitchen. He intentionally scalded her after 4 years of brutal abuse. Bear claimed that Mark wanted Donna to die and ensured her death. All that remained was for him to hide it from authorities. Even when her skin was peeling and she was decomposing, Mark continued to torment Donna. He only called 911 when there was no risk of her voice being heard, when he could control the narrative. Donna's value to Mark had diminished. He had taken away everything she had to live for. The jury was also presented with a receipt for hot dog buns, contradicting Mark's claim that he was cooking pasta on the evening of the scalding incident. Multiple witnesses testified for the prosecution. Donna's pathologist detailed the extensive injuries he discovered during her autopsy, leaving the jury shocked. Burns expert Dr. Joel Fish testified that, out of compassion, he would have immediately administered a high dose of morphine if she had come to his burn unit. He stated that Donna would have been in immense pain and that with proper medical care, including a medically induced coma and skin grafts, her chance of survival could have been almost 100%. Dr. Fish also dismissed the idea that Donna physically prevented Mark from taking her to the hospital, as someone in septic shock would have been too weak to physically resist. Deborah Sinclair, a domestic violence expert and Crown witness, testified that Donna was likely trapped in what's known as a trauma bond. This bond likely formed due to a cycle of severe abuse and intermittent affection, creating a strong psychological attachment to Mark. This bond was further maintained by exploiting Donna's insecurities and nurturing nature, positioning himself as a victim to gain sympathy. Sinclair explained that victims of this kind of abuse often prioritize the consequences for the abuser over their own well-being, protecting them even at their own expense. Detective Michael Hudson, working on the case, shared that one of the most difficult aspects was witnessing Donna's family, friends, and colleagues who had attempted to intervene, wondering if they could have saved her. He affirmed that everyone had done their utmost, emphasizing that there was only one villain in this situation, and he would be going to prison for a significant period. The jury took less than a day to deliberate, and on June 7, 2013, they found Mark Hutt guilty of first-degree murder. He received an automatic life sentence with no possibility of parole for 25 years, the maximum penalty in Canada. Donna's younger brother, Derek, expressed that an evil man was rightfully incarcerated for his evil crime. He believed that a higher power would take care of things. The case had a significant impact, with the loss of a young life leaving a profound void. Derek highlighted Donna's desire for a loving and caring family, which she didn't get due to an evil man. Despite her silence, Donna's voice continued to speak out. It conveyed a message that such treatment shouldn't be tolerated, and help is available for those in need. Derek urged people to seek support, emphasizing that there are many avenues to escape difficult situations and find a better life. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing. We release similar videos on a weekly basis.